Hey guys, welcome to my tutorial for Blackmagic Design's DaVinci Resolve version 16. It's such a powerful piece of software, and best of all, it is 100% free. The software might look a bit scary when you first install it, but if you try to follow along with me, you should be up and running in no time. The tutorial is about 30 minutes long, so feel free to grab a coffee, get comfortable and prepare to learn about one of the best video editing suites out there at the moment. I've made the assumption that you've already downloaded and installed the software on your computer. If this isn't the case, I'll put a link to the software below and get it installed before continuing. A lot of the information I give here is relevant to older versions, so carry on watching if you are using version 15 or earlier. If you've got any comments or suggestions about the video, please let me know in the comments area below. I'm always looking to improve my content, and constructive feedback is always welcomed. Anyway, enough of the intro and on to the main event. Let's get busy!
It might look a little bit scary, especially if you've never used a video editor before, but once you've spent a little time with the product, you'll see how easy and powerful it is. But let's crack on. First of all, I'll take you for a quick tour around the interface. Along the bottom, you can see that we have a number of tabs. There's the Media, Cut, Edit, Fusion, Colour, Fairlight and Deliver tabs. These all play a role in producing your final video. We'll be mainly working in the Edit and the Deliver tabs today, and I'll cover the other tabs in a future video. So before I start the tutorial, make sure that you are on the Edit tab as shown here. On the top left hand corner of the interface, this will show you the media pool. This is where you work with the files that you wish to import, such as your clips and audio files. Towards the top center and top right of the screen, these are your video preview windows. The left hand one is the clip preview window and the right hand one is the timeline preview window. What this means is that on the left hand video screen, you will see the contents of the clip that you're actually working with, and on the right hand screen you will see the video and the preview for the whole timeline that you're working on. Underneath both preview screens you can see a number of controls. There's a play forward, play back, stop, go to next clip, go back to previous clip and repeat, and pretty much the same functions on this side as well. The final area below the two preview screens, which is this area here, is the actual timeline. This is where you'll do most of your work, and it gives you a visual representation of the clips you're working on, how they interact with each other, and you'll be able to add clips, lay them on top of each other, add transitions, etc, etc. We'll cover all this later in this video. Now the first thing that you must do before starting any editing is to check your project settings. You must ensure that your timeline frame rate is set to your desired output frame rate before importing any files. If you fail to do this, then you'll be unable to change it once the editing begins. So to check the settings, click on File, click on Project Settings, make sure Master Settings is highlighted, and then review the settings for timeline frame rate and playback frame rate. Now for these two videos I'm working on today, as for the demo, I know they're both 29.97 frames per second. And I also want to output at 29.97 frames per second, so I'm going to change it to 29.97. And also, it's a good idea to change the playback frame rate to match your timeline frame rate, so you get a good representation of the output as it's playing along. Once you've done that, you can click on Save. And you are ready to go. So we now need to import our first clips. I find the easiest way to do this, if you're working on a smallish project, is just to right click in the media pool area, click on Import Media, and then browse to the folder where your files are. As you can see on my screen here, I've got 3 files. One is a music file and 2 are video clips. I'll select them all and then click on Open. And you can see now that they've been added into the media pool. One final check I do before I start any editing is just to make sure that the project settings haven't changed. So we just go back onto the file, project settings, and you can see the timeline frame rate is still 29.97, but now it's grayed out, which means you can't change it, and the playback frame rate is 29.97. Now that can be changed depending on what sort of project you're working on, but I tend to leave it as the same as the timeline frame rate. Okay, now that we've got our media imported, it's time to start working with them. There's a number of ways you can view the contents of your video clips. Firstly, you can just mouse over the clip you're interested in and scrub from left to right, and a preview will be shown in the left-hand video window, such as like this. This is a good way of checking that you're using the correct clip, and also for a quick brief overview of what the content of the clip actually is. Once you've identified the clip, then you can double click on it and it will actually transfer it into the left-hand preview window. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of controls underneath the video window. So you can move the slider left or right. This is called the playhead. The beginning or to the end of the clip. You can also use the play button to show it in real time. You can click on stop. You can click on go back. And also you can click to the end and also to the beginning as such. It's pretty straightforward so far. Now the clip that I've imported is around 40 seconds long, and what I want to do is cut it down so it's a little bit more interesting and just show you how you can use the editing tools as well. So again, there's a number of ways you can choose subclips within the clip, and the one that I tend to use most often is in and out markers. So what I mean by this is that you mark the in of the clip, and then at the end of it you mark it as the out of the clip. It's quite a simple process, and I'll show you what I mean. So click on the play button, and you can see that the video is playing back in real time. I don't want to use any of this clip yet, so I want to start using from about there. So I've just hit the space button, which is a shortcut for starting and stopping playback. Now I'll press the I button. That means in. Okay, so I've marked the start of the clip that I want to use. I'll press space again to start playback. Just leave it to play for a few seconds. And I think about there will do for the end of the clip. So I'll now click on O for out. Now you'll see on the actual timeline display below the clip here that we've got these dark grey and light grey areas. So the whole clip is signified by the full length of the timeline there. And what we've done is created a subclip within the main clip, and that is highlighted by the light grey area there. The dark grey areas are unused parts of this clip. So the next step is to drag the clip onto the timeline so we can start working with it. There are a number of ways to do this, but I'll show you the easiest way for now, and then when we add the second clip I'll show you the different options. So you literally just hold and click the left mouse button down and then drag it onto the timeline here, and make sure that it snaps to the left hand side where it says video 1. And you'll now see that the timeline preview has also come into play because we've got stuff on our timeline now. You might also notice that there's no audio track added here. This is drone footage and they don't normally have audio files as well. You normally add music or your own voiceover and what have you. So at the moment the audio track is empty. I will be adding some music later on in this tutorial, but for now we're just going to be working with the video. I'll now add the second clip to the timeline and then take you through the various editing tools available in this software. So I'll just repeat the process of double clicking the clip I wish to use, which in this case is this one. It will then add it to the clip preview window. I'll set the playhead to the start of the clip and hit play. Now I'm going to do it slightly different this time. I'm going to do it in real time. So I'm going to hit I when I want to start using the clip, which is about now. And then I'll hit O when I'm at the end of the clip I want to use, which is about now. Okay, and I can click on space just to stop the playback because I don't want any more footage to be used. So you can see there, again, I've got a sub clip within my clip, but rather than doing it stop, start, I just hit play, hit I when I wanted to start using it, and then hit O when I'd finished with the clip. We can always fine tune this later in the timeline below anyway. So again, I can just simply drag the footage onto the timeline as such and add it onto the end of the clip. But what I'm going to do this time is show you all the different options that are available to you as you get a bit more advanced in your video editing skills. So if you drag the footage from the left over to the right hand side onto your timeline video window, you'll see that you get a pop-up with different options. Now overwrite is white and highlighted at the moment. That is the default action when you drag something onto the timeline. But there are a number of other options available to you. There's insert, there's replace, fit to fill, place on top, append, and ripple overwrite. So I'm going to take you through these different options right now. The first option I'm going to show you is insert. But to show you this, I need to move the playhead slightly to the middle of the current clip. This ready orange thing here is what they call the playhead, and that just shows you where you are in the current timeline. So I'm going to put it there. So what I'm going to do now is drag this from the left onto the right and choose insert. And as you can see, what it's done, it's split the existing clip into two and inserted my current clip right in the middle of the two of them. It's quite handy if you want to insert a short clip into the middle of a long one, but generally I don't use this one that often. Now, one other thing that I want to show you, that if you do make a mistake or you put things in the wrong place, you've always got the option to undo. And to do the undo, you just press Ctrl and Z on your keyboard and it takes you back to the previous step. Now, if you've realized that you actually do want to keep the effect that you've just done or the edit, you can press Ctrl Shift and Z and that will redo the last thing you did. So you can do Ctrl Z to undo and Ctrl Shift and Z to redo. Very handy to use when you're editing, just in case you make mistakes and what have you. So I'll use the undo to restore the timeline to how it was before we inserted the file here. So we still have the one single clip again. Now the second option to use is overwrite. So again, I will drag the clip from the left to the right. This is the default option and we just drop it in there. And you might have seen that it actually overwrote the clip that was on the timeline from where the playhead was until the end of the clip itself. Now if you look a little bit closer, you can see that the first clip is here, then it overwrote with the second clip which I'd selected, which is a little bit shorter, and then the existing first clip also exists here at the end. That's because this clip here, the clip I've just imported, isn't quite as long to overwrite to the end. So it's literally just overwritten for the duration of the second clip over the first. Okay, so the other function I need to show you is the ripple overwrite function. And what this does is it actually changes the length of the video to match the video you're actually putting onto the timeline, rather than just inserting it into the middle and then shoves everything up alongside. So for example, if I then drag this down to the end of the timeline and then think, oh right, okay, actually I want to put something here to replace this one, I can move this onto there, choose ripple overwrite, and you can see that it's taken the old clip out, reduced the length of the footage down to the correct length, and then just inserted it in here. So that's quite a neat way of putting a new piece of footage into a timeline that's already quite long and making sure that it actually selects the correct duration. The next option is fit to fill. So let me just set the timeline back to how it was. I'll leave this second clip here just for now, just so you can see how the different options affect the timeline and the clips and what have you. So I'm going to drag this clip over to the right again and do fit to fill. And you can see what it's done there is actually added the second clip in that I've just dragged down, but also this little speed icon here means that it's had to change the length of the footage to actually fill the amount of space that the original clip was using. So if we right click on this clip and do change clip speed, you'll see that it's actually slowed it down to 46% of the original clip speed to make sure that it fits into the right length. And just a quick note, if you right click on anywhere within the desktop here, it brings up the context menu, so you get access to a lot of other advanced stuff. Most of them aren't really needed for this beginner's tutorial, but once you get a little bit more confident, you can explore the options or look at future tutorials that I'll be creating in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so that's the fit to fill. So the next option is to place on top. And all this simply does is create a second video and potentially second audio track on top of the original without altering the first video track. To show you what I mean, just drag this over to there, do place on top, and you can see now that a second video track has been created. If there was audio, a second audio track would be created as well. And what this allows you to do is experiment with two different clips to see which one looks best and fits in with the timeline and what have you. One thing to note is that Resolve does have a strict order of preference on what is shown on the timeline. So the higher up the clip is on this timeline window here determines on whether it gets shown or not. So the top one will always win over the ones that are below it. To show you what I mean, if I start hitting play here now on the timeline window, you'll see the original clip, but then as soon as the playhead hits the second video on the second line, it flicks over to that. And it'll show the entire clip length for that one and then click back to the second one. So that's something to bear in mind if you are using two video tracks. Okay, so let me just set back to how I was. There we go. And the final one is just to append at the end, and that does exactly what it says on the tin. So all I need to do is just drag this clip onto there, do append at end, and it adds a clip onto the end of the timeline. This is really useful if you've got a huge timeline and you just want to add clips to the end, or it's like your outro video for YouTube or some titles or what have you. You know, you can just literally drag onto there, select append to end, and boom, it's on there. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is add a audio track onto the timeline. So what I'm going to do is just drag the audio file, which is this one. You can see you can scrub through it there, showing the different tunes and tracks and waveforms and what have you. Just pick it up and drag it onto audio 1 below the video track. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just go back to the beginning of the playhead and click on play. Okay, so you can see there that the audio clip is much longer than the video clip, so we need to do some work on the editing of that. So what I'm going to do is give you a quick tour of all the different editing tools that are available to us. And you can see these in the middle of the screen here with the various different icons. I'll not go into too much detail into which each one does, that's for a later tutorial. I don't want to blind you with science. But the one at the moment that's selected is the red arrow. That's this one here, and that is the selection tool. The other tool that's quite useful when you're a beginner is the blade tool. That's this one here, and you just click on it and it will go red. So whichever tool is in focus at the moment or in use will be displayed as red. So you can click on the selection tool, that will go red, blade tool, that will go red. The only exception to this is this one here, which is the dynamic trim tool, and that will go yellow, and it will also change the playhead to yellow. But that's quite an advanced tool and it's not really in scope for this tutorial, so we won't deal with that. I'll just deselect it. So I'm going to put it back to selection tool. Another useful tool for the Resolve beginner is the blade edit tool. This allows you to cut clips into smaller segments quickly and easily. Prior to using the blade edit tool, make sure that the clip you want to use it with is in focus. And what I mean by this is selecting the selection tool and then clicking on the clip you wish to work with. In this case, it's going to be the first one. And you can see it's selected because it's got a red border. The next thing to do is click on the blade tool. And then you can move the playhead to where you wish to create your first cut. So for example, we wanted to cut this bit here. All you need to do now is press Ctrl and B, and you can see that it's split the clip into two chunks. So what we need to do now is move the playhead forward, and rather than pressing Ctrl and B to cut the clip, I'm now going to move the arrow or the blade over the playhead and just click with my mouse button. And as you can see, it's now created a second segment. So we have 3 segments in total for this first clip. What we want to do now is click on the selection tool, click on the second segment, that's the one we want to delete, and simply press the delete button. And you can see it automatically deletes the segments and pushes everything else back together again. Now if you don't want it to push everything together, so let me just undo that. So say you wanted a gap there because you're going to put some new footage in, so you can just press the select tool again and hit backspace rather than delete. And pressing backspace actually creates a gap in the timeline rather than pushing everything back up together again. It can be quite useful, as I say, if you have other clips that you want to insert in there instead. So that's the blade tool. It's a very quick and easy tool to use to break your clips down into segments, and between that and the selection tool you've got everything you need to start creating your first clips. I'll just put the timeline back as it was so we can continue editing. Okay, so if we now move the arrow cursor over the clips in the timeline, you'll see that the arrow indicator changes into different shapes. So if we move over to the left here, you can see that it's got a little angle bracket with a small razor blade type thing pointing left. If we move it to this end, you'll see it goes to the right. If you move it to where the 2 clips are actually joined, then you'll see that you just get the 2 angle brackets looking like that. Now this all signifies different edit operations and what you can actually do with the clip. So in this case, if you change it to the left hand pointing edit icon and then hold the left mouse button and drag to the right, you can see that the clip actually starts to shorten and leaves a gap there from the start of the clip. Back again. If you do the same on the right hand side and hold the left mouse button down, you can see that the clip will shorten that way and leave a gap there. One other option is to place the arrow over both clips like that, so you get that displayed on the screen. Hold the button down and then you can actually move the clip duration left or right, and the full timeline duration will stay the same, but the way you've edited is slightly different. And you can see also that you get a preview of how things look, where the playhead will be in the timeline video. So on the left is where it is and on the right hand is where it was. Now you might notice also that the clips have got little green tinges or red tinges next to them on the left or right hand side. Now what this means is there's actually more footage to work with if needs be. So I could go to the end here of this clip and see there's a green tinge to it, so that means I can actually extend it further if I needed to. So I can go to the right all the way out to the end of this outline. Once I reach the end of the outline, it will turn red. That means that I've reached the end of the footage for this particular clip and there's nothing more I can do. So I'll just drag that back to there again. And I can do the same with this as well. This will actually overwrite the existing clip. You can see I can drag it out all the way there and you get the red again. So it's quite a useful way of extending footage or shortening it if you're not quite happy with the original captures. So we can use our newfound editing skills to edit the audio track to make it to fit the length of the current video footage. So what I'm going to do is cut the start of the track out and just start the music when the fanfares begin, somewhere around here. You can see that doesn't match up at the minute, so we can just simply drag that to the start of the clip, and you can see now that the audio matches the video footage a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is then move the playhead back to the beginning and now see how that all sounds with the footage. Okay, so the video is now taking shape, but there's still a few extra things I'd like to add to it just to tidy it up and make it that little bit more polished. The first thing I'd like to do is fade the video out in time with the music so it just looks a little bit better and not quite as an abrupt end. It's really easy to do, so you just select the final clip here, left click on the mouse, and you can see you've got these two sort of handlebars on the clip. If you just grab the one on the right hand side here and left click and hold the left mouse button down, drag to the left, you see that little triangle shape happening, and what that's doing is starting the fade out of the clip itself. And that 3:06 means it's going to take 3 seconds and 6 frames to fade out. So I'm going to start the fade out somewhere around here. Okay, so if we now move the playhead back to the start of this clip by just clicking on here and press play, you'll see now what I've done. And there you go, you can see that already looks much better than just the abrupt end. Okay, so another thing that we might want to do is add some titles to the start of the video, telling people what the subject is. So to do this, we need to use the effects library, so we'll just click up here on the left hand side, and you can see that the toolbox now appears here. Click on titles, then click on text, and drag, so left click and drag onto and create a new video timeline. You'll see that it turns this beige colour. What you need to do is just double click on the box and you get the inspector up here. This shows you all the attributes for the current item that you're working on, and we can change the text to say cool video. We're going to change the font to Arial. We'll change it to red. And we'll make it bold. Okay, so I'm going to hit play, and you can see now that the text is showing on the video, and then after a few seconds the text will disappear. One other nice touch might be to get the text to actually fade out rather than it just disappearing like that, and we can do exactly the same as we did with the fade out on the clip below. So select the text, select the grab handle and drag to the left, and we'll just make it fade out over 2 seconds. Again, we can just move the playhead to the beginning, hit play, and you can see now that looks much more professional because it fades out slowly. Another thing that we might want to do is actually change the volume of the audio clip itself, because to me it's a little bit overpowering. So if we just click into the audio clip here and then move the arrow over this line, you can see that you get an up arrow and a down arrow. If you hold the left mouse button, and then you can drag either up or down to change the volume of the actual clip itself. So I'm going to change it down to somewhere here. And you can see that the actual waveforms have shrunk itself as well. That gives an indication that it has actually gone quieter. So if we go back to the beginning of the video again, hit play, and hopefully you can hear that the audio is now more in the background, not quite as overpowering, and all our effects are in place. And there's the fade out at the end. One last thing I'd like to add is a transition. And to do this, you select the video transitions menu here on the left hand side. And what I want to do is just put a cross dissolve in between the two clips just to make it look a little bit tidier, because it's a little bit abrupt at the moment. And you just select the cross dissolve, hold the left mouse button down and drag it over between the two clips. And you can see you get that little white box there. That signifies that there is a transition in place. And if you want to extend the length of the transition, you can just move your cursor to the left of it there, hold the left mouse button down, and then just drag it out a little bit like that. So if we now go again, all the way to the beginning, and click on play, you should get a good view of how the transition works. And there you can see that the transition works beautifully, and the fade out also was there, which is great. Okay, so that's pretty much the clip done. It is very basic, but it should give you a good starting point for creating your own videos. There's a few other tools I want to show you on the screen before we move on to actually producing the final content for YouTube or what have you. One of the more important things is the zoom in and zoom out on the timeline. This is done by the plus and minus signs here. So you click on plus, and you can see that the timeline increases here. That gives you a little bit more granularity on what you're working with. And you can also click on minus to get a good overview of the actual timeline itself. Another important thing to use are the lock icons on the actual timelines and the videos themselves. So if, for example, you wanted to just make sure that this audio track never got altered while you're doing the moving around of clips here, just click on the lock icon and you can see it gets grayed out. So you can't actually make any changes to this now. I can change these videos around or add extra things in. So if I just drag that onto there and then maybe drag something else on the end, but nothing will actually happen to the audio track itself. You can also do the same for video clips. So you can lock that, and now I can't do anything. Lock them both. And then one other thing that's really useful is muting of the soundtrack. So if you're getting sick of hearing the same music all the time, you can just mute it and work with the video clips. And you can also do the same with the video clips as well. So you can click on there, and that hides that complete timeline on the player. So if I move the playhead back to here and click on play, you can see I'm only seeing the titles and getting the audio. That can be quite useful if you're working with a number of video tracks and you just want to highlight particular ones for editing purposes. So I think that pretty much covers the edit screen from a beginner's point of view. You've got enough information there. You can create titles, you can add audio tracks, you can edit the video clips, you can put transitions in, you can move the start and end points, you can put fade-ins, fade-outs, etc, etc. So that should give you enough ammo to create your first YouTube masterpiece. I will cover some more of the advanced stuff in later tutorials, but I think due to time, now is a good point to actually start looking at converting the clip into something we can use on YouTube. So you've done all the editing on your video and now you want to unleash your latest masterpiece onto the internet. And to do this, we need to use the Deliver tab. So click on the Deliver Rocket icon and you can see that Resolve has a number of presets, and to be honest, they're pretty good for a quick export. In this case, we'll be using the YouTube export to export the video for uploading to your new YouTube channel. So click on the YouTube icon and you'll see that you're given a number of options. The first thing you need to do is change the file name to something a little bit more meaningful. In this case, I'm going to call it Cool Video Demo. You can also change the location of where you want the file to be stored. In my case, I'm just leaving it on the E drive under my drone folder, and it's called Resolve for Beginners. We can click on the Browse button and change that location to anywhere that you feel suitable. For the rest of the options, I'll just leave them as they are, and then click on the Add to Render Queue button. You'll see that over here now, a job has been added to the render queue, and when you're ready, click on Start Render. Resolve will start rendering your file and creating the final output. Now, how long this takes depends on the power of your PC, how much memory you've got, etc, etc, and also, of course, how long the video is. In this case, it should only take around 30 seconds or so, but for longer videos, it can take tens of minutes or even hours. Once the render's finished, like it has now, you can then right-click over the job name, click on Open File Location. And you can see here that the Cool Video Demo file is now here ready for viewing. So I can just double click on this. And there you go, it starts playing in the Windows Media Player. So what a good idea now is just to check, make sure the renders work correctly and everything is in sync, and make sure that the content is exactly what you expected. Once you've done that, you can close that down, you can close that down, and that's it, you're pretty much done. You can just upload the file to YouTube using the normal methods, set the descriptions and the tags, etc. And away you go, just wait for the subscribers and the hits to come in.
Okay guys, I hope you have enjoyed this video and found it's relatively straightforward to follow. Resolve 16 is a really complicated product to use and I barely scratched the surface here, but hopefully you've got enough information to create your own fully featured videos now. I'll be adding more tutorials in the future which will go into more depth, and I'll show you how to colour grade, add effects and use the more complicated edit tools. I do love receiving feedback and try to answer every single comment on YouTube. Please leave any comments or suggestions about this video below. And if you found it useful and enjoyable, then please hit the like button. I'd also love it if you subscribe to the channel to find out about any new and forthcoming videos such as drone footage, reviews of tech products and tutorials such as this. If you do subscribe, don't forget to hit that bell button to get instant notifications as soon as any of my new content is uploaded. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time, and until the next time, bye bye.